Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. We're going to do a great show for you today. Our mock draft 2.0, second mock draft of the draft season. And we are going to play a shared GM role. So we're going to do a live mock, and we need to agree on each move that we make, whether it's a trade back or the player and the pick, before we actually make the pick. So there'll be some discussion, I'm sure, regarding all that stuff. And then we've got some news on some player movement and cap relief to share with you. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. There is there's 4 more people being added to the free agency list, that none of which should be a surprise for Seahawk fans. And they released 4 guys that had contracts that made no sense for the Seahawks to keep on their roster. So outside line or pass rusher, Dre Jones, George Fant, the right tackle who played like 3 snaps last year, Roy Robertson-Harris, a guy they traded for mid-season because they had so many injuries at defensive tackle they couldn't field a team, and he had a way too big of a cap number. And then Rashawn Jenkins, a guy who played his way out of the starting lineup and lost his job to Coby Bryant. So all of those guys were making far more than their production indicated that they're worth, and the Seahawks needed the cap space. So they went from being over the cap now down to $16.4 million in cap space, which allows them to start the league year, begin making moves. And this is before they've touched that Jaxon-Smith contract, which is crazy, or given DK Metcalf the extension that he needs. So still a lot of room left to go.
Lockett. Yeah, you release Tyler Lockett. That's a potential move. That's a $17 million cap savings right there. So you get up over $33 million before free agency. You're going to do something with Nwoso's contract. That's probably going to be a restructure. You're going to save about $6 million doing that. Geno's extension could well be north of $20 million in savings and first-year cap hit if they needed that money. And DK Metcalf could be another $10 million. Noah Fant could be a cut potentially still at almost $9 million in savings. Woolen's got some money in his contract if you were desperate and needed that money. But it looks like they're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of $65 to $70 million, really, if you don't even touch DK's contract at all, just extending Jaxon-Smith and Nwoso restructure, and unfortunately letting Tyler Lockett go. That gets you to 65. And I think that's going to be plenty of money to do what they need to do in free agency. Yeah. So that's good.
But these moves got them under the cap, and it also gave them the space necessary to sign a guy like Ernest Jones and get him back, back under contract for next year and beyond. So yeah, I mean, it gets them to where they need to be. And you're right, not releasing Lockett and Nwoso gives the team more time to continue to work on restructuring those deals, because I'm sure Lockett wants to continue playing, but he's not going to be able to continue playing on his current contract. So they're going to need, to add an extension that basically decreases his yearly pay by about half to account for his decrease in production. So if they can get that worked out, then they'll get that worked out. But if not, then I agree. I think he'll be released before the start of the league year.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get to the fun stuff. So we're going to do a mock draft today. We're going to use NFL Mock Draft Database's Mock Draft Simulator. And the reason for that is we use all their big board information, which compiles and composites all the big boards available that are published, and it gives you a fair representation of where players are slotted in the draft. And so when you run the simulator, it's semi-realistic if you can keep your trades realistic. And I'm not saying that's the way it's going to turn out and so forth. There's a lot of different mocks, a lot of different big boards and so forth. And obviously the draft will turn out completely different from all of them, but this gives you kind of a nice base to work from. And then what we'll do is we'll run the simulator. We'll stop at each pick. We'll talk about whether or not we need to trade, or there's a player there that we'd really like to take. And then we'll make those decisions, and we'll just kind of go through the process, and we'll talk about a lot of prospects and see how we do. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. So I'm going to add the simulator to the visual. If you are on our YouTube channel, you can see that as we run this thing. So I'm going to start by running it. It's going to go to pick 18 relatively quickly. I've got it run on fast mode. So we'll just start this thing and we'll go through this process. And it's going to run a little slower than normal based on the time of day. But we are underway here. And it looks like we're on the clock. We have one trade offer come in, which is completely unrealistic. I'd take this trade offer in a heartbeat if it was in real life, right? So Cleveland's offering the 33rd overall pick, number 67, number 94, number 202, number 216, number 2. That's just crazy. Plus next year's 4th and 6th. We're not going to take that because that's just stupid. Okay, so at 18, Keith, there is a strategy here that you often see with mock drafts especially, and then John Schneider obviously has traded down a few different times in his career. But at 18, we've got Tyler Warren, big name tight end available, best tight end in the draft by a wide margin. He'd be a weapon, but it seems like a luxury pit. James Pierce Jr., really loved his testing at the combine, Keith, but he's got some character concerns that may take him off the board. I assume based on Seattle's conservative nature with regards to that in the last few years, that he may end up being off their board. Malaki Starks is the first safety off the board here with an 18 overall slot in the draft, but I'm not sure if that makes sense for the Seahawks. You've got an offensive tackle, wide receiver.
Go ahead and scroll down a little bit.
Offensive line, Kenneth Grant, the defensive lineman, another tight end, linebacker in the draft.
So we didn't get an offer to trade, but I wondered if you were willing to hit the trade button up above and propose one.
Yeah, let's try that. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now, normally I wouldn't want to go back any more than about 7 spots, and Houston's there at 25. I like Houston in this trade scenario.
Yeah, I find myself trading with Denver a lot this year.
Okay.
So
let's see what let's see what we can get here. So
try the third
25
round.
And then I would really love to figure out a way to get that 58th overall pick.
Okay.
Even if we have to give up future compensation to do it. But we can start with, let's just see where we're at. So we need to give more. And I would say like our 4th round pick. That does complete the trade. So let's go ahead and do that. And we get the 58th overall pick out of that, which I do like. Now that may be slightly unrealistic, but it's available on this mock. Now, Emanwari just went right before our pick. We've got a few more offers, none of which I like. So let's take a look at the available players. Yeah. So I really like
I'm
Luther
looking at
Burden.
this. I really like Kenneth Grant of the guys that
I
are
do
available.
too. I do too. Tyler Brooker's getting a lot of mentions as an interior offensive lineman. I'm not sure about the scheme fit there. And he didn't really test completely athletically, but he's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
You could push Gray Zabel up if you're really interested in getting that interior offensive line. It looks like he's got the length to play at guard and not just center. He's also 6'5", so that may not work out for him at center. So that would be my other consideration. Gray Zabel or Kenneth Grant. Now, there's a lot of interior offensive line in the first couple rounds. We could probably get a guy later. And Jaxson Dart could very well be a quarterback that Seattle looks at, especially if we were to drop down to 25. I would feel a little bit better about taking a quarterback there. Keith, what do you think?
So their biggest need is interior offensive line, and it's tempting to go Gray Zabel there just to take care of that. But I don't know if that's great value, and I think there's guys that we can get later. Kenneth Grant is the last defensive tackle for a while. There's a big shelf. Now, they've also got two really good defensive tackles on the roster. And so adding a third is nice, but it, isn't necessarily something that they need to do. So to me, it comes down to those two guys. I know you like Jaxson Dart. I think if he's there at 50, that becomes a done deal. But I'm not ready to take him at 25. What do you think?
Okay. Well, let's go with Kenneth Grant, and we'll look at the other options when we get to 50. Or we can always pause the simulator and we could trade up if we wanted to. But let's go ahead and take Kenneth Grant, and that's going to get this thing going again. And we'll just see where we're at 50, Keith. So it's continuing to run here. So yeah, I wouldn't mind any of the picks we just talked about, like the interior offensive line, the quarterback. I like Gray Zabel. I think he's going to end up going in places that, he just
went at 47.
He just went off the board. That would have made the draft really to get both those interior guys, one on offense, one on defense. But Jaxson Dart is still there.
That's the thing. So with 58 being available to us because we have we made that trade back. That was a good pick to get a spot that high. I think you have that extra pick. This is the spot where you could use it for a guy like Jaxson Dart.
Okay, I agree. Let's just do the quarterback of the future thing and be done with it. Jaxson Dart. All right. So we're going to go to 58 now. Let's see who else is on the board at 58. So I'm going to just check out the trades really quick. Nah, let's skip those. Okay. So Maxwell Hairston tested really well at the combine as a semi-undersized cornerback. He could play on the boundary for you in a pinch, but he's more of a slot guy. He could also play some back end stuff for you. Travion Henderson is sitting there, a running back. I'm not really in love with Princely as an edge rusher myself. Trey Harris is a big-sized wide receiver from Mississippi. Trey Omas is a good-sized corner, but a little stiff. There's Marcus Boye, the interior offensive lineman for Purdue. That would be something that we would consider, I would think, Keith. Carson's Caleb Johnson's a big running back. Carson Swissinger is really kind of a linebacker that is off-the-ball linebacker that tested really well that I would consider. Xavier Watts, a safety. Mason Taylor, I think they would consider at tight end. Darian Porter, Keith, sitting there, one of the bigger corners
I like him
in
a lot.
this draft that offers some tremendous upside. Quishon Johnson or Jenkins, if they decide they wanted a running back out of this draft, he's one of those guys that fits the mold of being a physical runner. Jaden Higgins, again, had a great combine as a big wide receiver. And Wyatt Mullum, sitting there at offensive tackle, may move inside in the NFL. So there's a lot of choices, Keith.
Yeah. I think if we get past the third pick and we haven't taken an offensive lineman, I think our listeners will probably riot, given how
But it
bad
also
the
has to be a
offensive
good
line
fit.
is.
It also has to be a good fit in that stretch zone scheme as well. And I'm not sure if Marcus Boye does that. He's kind of a bigger guy.
I was thinking more along the lines of Wyatt Millham. I think with he's tall. He's at 6'6", but he's got shorter arms. And I think he moves inside, and I think it'd be a good fit at like left guard. And
I'm going to tell you a really good fit actually is Tate Ratledge from Georgia, Keith. Seahawks met with him. He fits that wide zone stuff, a little bit more athletic.
He's still available?
Than Millham. He's down here at 76 overall.
Oh, I didn't see him. Okay. No, yeah, I would take him. Absolutely.
He's a left guard prospect. In fact,
absolutely. I would much rather have him.
So let's do that. I
was, you have control of the screen. So I didn't see him. I was trying to flip to another window to make sure that I wasn't remembering wrong about Millham. But
we didn't get a great grade on him, but I'm telling you, for this system in this part of the draft, he's a guy. Okay. So here we are at 82. Now, some of the guys we just talked about and considered at 58 are still on the board. Mason Taylor at tight end. That's kind of an area where you would really consider him. The running back from Ohio State. Jalen Higgins is, I really like the Higgins upside completely. Jordan Birch, the edge from Oregon.
Ooh, Savion Williams.
Gunnar Helm, the tight end. Quinn Ewers would be an option if we didn't take Dart earlier. I think Ewers is going to be on the board in this area, along with Howard. I would say out of the available picks, I would either go, the linebacker there too. He's underrated. We haven't really talked about linebackers yet on this show, and we'll get to those in a few weeks. But he's a guy that we're going to be talking about when we do our linebacker show. Mason Taylor is a guy that has the frame to block, but isn't yet a really good blocker in the NFL, probably, but gives you that upside and that smooth catching ability at tight end. And then Judkins is that physical 220-pound running back that I know that John Schneider will love. Jaden Higgins had a tremendous combine. I really like him.
Yeah, I remember him isn't he shorter?
No, that Jaden Higgins is the big guy. Joel.
Oh yeah, okay.
Joel is the one that's smaller. Higgins is the guy that's like 6'2", 220 that run a 4.39 or something like that.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think in terms of need, here, you've got your interior offensive lineman. You've got a defensive lineman. So you've invested in the trenches the way you're supposed to. They got their quarterback of the future by moving down and getting an extra pick. I think at this point you could kind of go off script a little bit. And a guy like Mason Taylor makes a lot of sense. A guy like Jaden Higgins makes a lot of sense, especially given that Tyler Lockett's probably played his last game as a Seahawk. I think that one of those two guys should probably be this pick.
I agree. I'm going to lean Higgins in that. I think he's ready-made and ready to go full-time. I think Mason Taylor comes in. He's going to be your third tight end in year one and then develop.
Then it's Higgins. Higgins is the guy.
Let's do Higgins. Now, from here, Keith, we drop. We have a very large drop in the draft.
We traded our 4th round pick in order to get that flexibility to take Dart. So if there's a guy that would
you like me to pause the draft around 120 and just kind of see where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sit here and watch because you have the top 6 guys kind of available on the screen, and if there's someone that I'm like, ooh, we need to grab him before he comes off, I'll tell you to be like, ooh, pause
Okay.
it, and let's talk about it. So go for
Okay,
it.
here we go. Now, this is going to take a minute because it's running a little slow.
It's running
Based
a
on
lot
my
slow.
based on my bandwidth in my neighborhood this time of the evening. You know, later on here, we're going to have options to look at linebackers. We're going to have options to look at corners, running backs, etc. So I think there's still a lot left on the board. But at 173, it gets pretty slim. But I think we'll still have options if we should stick.
Yeah, I watched Devon Neal come off the board at running back.
Smail Mondin looks good. Stutzman's good. Jackson Haas, the blocking tight end, would be interesting. All right, here we go. So we are on the clock, Keith.
We are on the clock at 173.
We've got an interior 173. So we've got a Dylan Fairchild as an interior offensive lineman. I'm not sure about him. I really like Ratledge from Georgia, but I'm not sure about Fairchild. RJ Harvey's a nice sized running back. Malaki Moore. Jackson Haas is the best blocking tight end in the draft. That's intriguing to me at this spot, I'll be honest.
That would definitely free up Barner.
Damian Martinez, or there's Mitchell Evans as well, which also intrigues me as one of the most complete tight ends in the draft. I think he's gonna move up a little bit. So I would consider out of this group, Jack Kaiser at linebacker, Mitchell Evans tight end, Damian Martinez at running back. I really like him. Jackson Haas at tight end. What are your overall thoughts, Keith?
Just looking at value in this, the tight end makes a lot of sense. I'm also kind of looking at running back and corner at this phase in the draft. I'm not seeing the value corner that I want, which, is a thing, but there's still lots of running backs that I like. So let's do one of the tight ends. Who's the guy from Notre Dame again?
All right. That would be Mitchell. Let me see if I can.
Do you want to do Mitchell or do you want to do the blocking tight end from
Mitchell Evans gives you way more upside on almost everything. I think that he's underdeveloped slightly in blocking, but he's also just a really good blocking. He's got the body and the frame to add a little bit of weight. The other guy, Jackson Haas, is really limited on his athletic ability and his pass catching upside. But he is going to be that physical guy that's going to take care of all that kind of stuff for you. Maybe even the fullback stuff. I'm not sure. Without having heavy notes on him right now. Yeah, they do have Barner.
Let's go ahead and take Mitchell Evans.
Okay. Mitchell Evans is a good pick. And at 187, if Damian Martinez is still at running back, I may twist your arm on that one. Okay. Although Jack Kaiser at linebacker is good. So Malaki Moore at safety. Jordan Hancock at corner, maybe. Damian Martinez is there. He's probably going to be one of the better values. Jackson Slater, they've met with many times, the interior offensive lineman from Sacramento State. I may see if he's available at 212 and go ahead and go with the overall value of Damian Martinez. It's going to really kind of fill out that running back room for you. Yeah, I think that's the right pick. I'm still like the defensive backs feel like they've gotten away from us a little bit. Jordan Hancock wouldn't be bad, but I can't remember his size, weight, speed combo just off the top of my head because we haven't done that group yet. on our show.
Let me look real quick because I can actually have that
Let's
available.
do that. We've got a little bit of time. We kind of sped through this a little bit, so that'd be great.
Yeah. So, Jordan Hancock. Yeah, this is interesting for everyone as we sit here and wait for me to find his name on the list.
Milwaukee Moore is sitting there too at safety. He's slotted at 139 overall. We're at pick 187. That would be great value. Just don't know much about Milwaukee Moore. I think he's kind of a free safety type.
I'm not finding
Elijah Roberts from SMU is sitting there as well, but we did draft Kenneth Grant. Jordan Hancock, what do you got?
I don't have Jordan Hancock, which is weirding me out that he's not showing up. And I'm wondering if maybe he is listed as a safety.
Sorry, I switched off my screen here really quick. There he is.
You got him?
Yeah.
I don't know why he's not coming up.
4.45, 6 foot, 195, ran a 4.45, ranked 32nd overall defensive back. He's a dude.
Yeah. Would you rather have him or Milwaukee Moore?
That's a great question. I'd probably go with the corner. But Damian Martinez is sitting there. Jack Kaiser's sitting there at linebacker. Kobe Hudson at wide receiver. We've already drafted a wide receiver, though. Let me go down just a little bit further and just kind of see what's coming up. Carson Vincent, the interior offensive lineman from Alabama. Kyle Williams, wide receiver. Yeah, nobody's really jumping off the page at me right now. Tyle Hamilton from Ohio State at defensive line is interesting. Clay Webb, interior offensive line, but those guys are going to be there our next pick. Phil Mafe, running back, I really like, is there at 2-something. So if we went outside of Damian Martinez at running back, I'd still like a running back that's available a little later. Maybe we should go to Jordan Hancock. Give us a better value.
Yeah, and then let's go for and then we'll look for Mafe with our next pick.
Okay, let's do that. And Damian Martinez might stick, maybe. Nope, he went. So Raheem Sanders is sitting there as well, running back. Can't remember his specs. Jackson Slater, who the team has met with a few different times. So a lot of tackles in this range. Mm-hmm. True tackles. Clay Webb, who's a good scheme fit for them. I think he's going to be available for our last pick, though. Phil Mafe is sitting there.
He might be available for our next pick as well.
Might be, yep. What do we need still, Keith? How about an upside developmental offensive tackle?
I mean,
or another interior offensive lineman.
Another offensive lineman wouldn't hurt. I'm just looking at who we've drafted. We don't have an edge. We don't have a pass rusher in this draft, which
Barron
is one of those things you got to look at. you always want, you can never have enough pass rushers. And I'd like to see us get a running back. We got our, defensive back, tight end, wide receiver, offensive line, quarterback, defensive line. A linebacker would be nice, and a running back would be nice, and a you flipped over to Hancock.
Yeah, I'm just going to look at Sanders at running back, 6 foot, 217 pounds, 4.46 40, 14th ranked overall running back out of Arkansas, age 22. Dominant frame, overpowers smaller players. That'd be interesting.
You want to go with him or Mafe? Because I know you like Mafe.
He's ranked 165 overall. Mafe's ranked, 210 or whatever. So
true, but
right now I'm just going with the board. I haven't looked at Sanders yet, Keith. I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think you and I both did the same thing. We started looking at bigger guys.
Yeah, and he's not small. He's 6 foot 217. That's a pretty normal standard size running back.
I like the 4.46 compared to Mafe, who's in the 4.6 range. So
yes, let's try that.
Do it.
And then we'll look at best player available at 236, which I think is a pretty decent approach. Okay. Jake Mazers, he's a kind of a center prospect. Jack Nelson, offensive tackle. Logan Brown, Ty Hamilton, defensive lineman. Let me see. Clay Webb, another interior offensive lineman that's a scheme fit.
What about Cody Lindenberg at linebacker? Have you looked at him at all?
No, I have not. But I heard that he tested well and looks really good as a prospect.
He did. And he was the guy that Lindenberg came through like that name a couple of years ago as a center. And so when I saw it, I was like, that's a linebacker. Let's go look. It looks like he's going to be a good special teams guy and a guy that can develop into perhaps a guy that can come in and play. So that's an option. But I think that just in terms of overall value at this point, there's so many offensive linemen here that make for good value. So if you can scroll back up a little bit.
I would go Clay Webb for me as far as scheme fit, but we can take a look at all of them. So Jake Majors sitting out there as the top ranked player available on the board. Jack Nelson, offensive tackle from Wisconsin. You know what you're going to get with that.
I kind of like Jalen Travis, I think. Let me
I don't know anything about him.
Find my notes here on him. I just remember that name coming through and being like, oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. Why am I having a hard time finding people today? I need a better way to search. There he is. Yeah, that's right. This guy is 6'8", 340.
He's the biggest dude in the draft. Huh?
Yeah, he's the guy, and he's a road grader as a run blocker on top of having that length.
Is that guy gonna fit in the current scheme though?
I mean, he is known as a road grader as a run blocker. So, I think you could do a lot with him. He's got a lot of physical tools. Probably better fit for an inside zone team than an out, zone stretch. But He's got there's potential there, and we're in the 7th round. I think you get a guy that has really high upside. I'm all for it. So that's why
I'll let you own that pick. Jalen Travis.
Yeah, 6'8". A
got an
potential
A+ grade on it.
Potential left tackle. Well, okay, so those grades that we're getting by the thing, it just goes based on, as people do hundreds of these, where do people usually pick them? And so we, according to other people doing drafts, we overdrafted, Jalen, Tate Ratledge. But according to the big boards out there, we got value. So take your pick, right? And I think interior offensive linemen don't tend to go as high as they do. They're going to in the actual draft, because for fans, that's a boring pick. Who wants a guard, right? When you could go grab a wide receiver. So I think that's actually not a bad pick. But overall, we look at our draft. We made one trade, moved down from 18 to 25 to get 58. We also had to give up 137, but getting that 58th pick got us Jaxson Dart, quarterback of the future.
Right.
We got a big time defensive lineman, one of the best in the draft again.
Yeah. He's going to be able to play 0 technique and 3 technique for the Seahawks, essentially replacing Jonathan Hankins in the lineup. And then the quarterback of the future, Jaxson Dart. I mean, come on.
And I think Ratledge is a great fit as a left guard. I think he's going to come in. Yeah,
he's a left guard all day. He's going to start right away.
Yep. And then after that, there's a lot of potential here. Mitchell Evans is a guy that at tight end that looks good. And then who's our wide receiver?
Jaden Higgins. Go look up Jaden Higgins, dude. You're going to be like, oh my goodness. Like, talk about one of the winners out of the combine. He was one of the winners. Yeah.
He's a guy that he's going to make DK Metcalf's life better, because teams have to respect that speed, that he can get deep and do things. So like that. And then after that, Hancock's a good cornerback. Sanders at running back is a guy that plugs nicely into that room. And then we got a developmental tackle. So I think overall, that's a pretty good draft.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I like the draft. I like it. I mean, it was, the process is the process. Sorry if it bored everyone. But you kind of go through and you want to talk about your options. You want to make sure you're getting the best value and trying not to force the board, allowing the board to come to you, even if you have to, you've only got so many picks and they're slotted in different ranges. And if your guy that you really identified is lower down in the draft a little bit, you've got to kind of maybe go get him. And that's why you see some value trades now and again by Schneider, because he's really just trying to maximize his board and the draft slots and so forth. But you just really never know, especially with a player like Tate Ratledge. I think he's going to end up going earlier than everyone thinks he is. And I think that's probably in the range where he's going to go in this draft. That's why I really enjoy getting another pick in the middle of the second round if I'm going to trade back in the first, because it just makes the whole draft kind of come together. It gives you at least 4 picks in the first top 100 and high picks like 25, 50, and 58. Those are players that are going to come in right away and have an impact on your roster. And now, in the case of Jaxson Dart, now this may be a pick and redshirt him the first year in an ideal situation. Jaxon-smith plays the entire year. He learns in the quarterback room from one of the best, really, veteran guys in there that really understands the game, understands the mentality that you need to have week in, week out, the work ethic and so forth. So that would be an ideal pick and situation for Jaxson Dart to come into this organization and just wait a year and come in and compete for that starting job in 2026.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's what moving back did, because now we got him with 50 instead of 58, which 58 was the pick we got for moving down. But having that extra pick gave us the luxury of, we could go get Dart and stash him and know that we're still going to have a second round pick to come in and make an impact on the roster this year. So that's what moving down does. It's fans hate it because they think you're losing out on quality, and you could get a blue chipper if you'd stayed. But in this case, I think it was worth it. We got a player that we really liked at the top of the draft, as get the big nose tackle at defensive line, and because we moved back, we got a quarterback of the future.
Yeah, nice. Well, I enjoyed that exercise, Keith. So what's next? I think we're done for the week. I think we'll come back early next week, and we'll kind of have a free agency preview. Seahawks are going to have a lot of their pre-free agency moves done, including what they're going to do with Tyler Lockett and Uchenna Nwoso, maybe others. And then we'll know kind of exactly what they're in play for. Free agency starts as far as being able to talk to agents and negotiate deals earlier than actual free agency starts. So a couple, 3 days ahead of time. And that process starts next week. So it'll be fast moving and fun. And we'll see if Seattle is a player early in free agency, or if they sit back and kind of let the first wave go, which is the tendency, and then kind of come in and pick up some value. I would imagine they're more on that end of the spectrum. So if fans should be prepared to be disappointed in as far as losing out on top tier prospects. But really, I'm okay with that. That's not really the way that you build a solid roster through and through. And I'd rather have Seattle be solid overall rather than expend a lot of money on doing what we just did with
Dre Jones.
Spent
a bunch of money on him, and now he's cut. He's gone. And yeah, I mean, that's why building through the draft's the way to go. But you do have to fill in your roster a little bit. And the team needs an offensive lineman. They really need a vet, someone that they can absolutely depend on to come in and do that. But to me, the two things that I'm watching for as free agency gets close is Tyler Lockett, Jaxon-smith, DK Metcalf. Like, if they get those contracts worked out in order to keep the guys and lower the cap number, or do they find trade partners, or that kind of thing. And then the other one is Ernest Jones, who's set to become a free agent and have the ability to talk to other teams. Can the Seahawks get a deal done with them? The moves today gave them the cap space to do so. They could get that deal done as early as now, and have that set up and be ready to go. So I think that those are the two things that I'm looking for between now and the first day of free agency.
Okay, so let's get out of here. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform, our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, share it, like it, and leave comments, all of that. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.